Yes, good evening everyone. Welcome to Lukmaan IAS. This is Geography section detailed analysis for UPSC Mains 2023 examination. So few days back we had trend analysis video and you must have watched that video where we have talked about previous year questions. Along with that, this year's questions and the changed nature of questions. What was the difficulty level of this year's question paper compared to previous year question? And along with that, we have also understood that what can be the strategy for next year's preparation. That was a brief trend analysis, but we promised you that we will come up with detailed discussions of all these questions. And in today's session, we will have detailed discussion of 8 questions GS1 geography part. Okay, so without any delay, let's start with the discussion. So yes, simultaneously let me also announce that geography module of GS foundation batch at Lukmaan IAS is going to start on 19th of October. So right now I am not going to talk about details of this program. In the end of this session, I will talk about details of this program and how it is relevant to our examination, how it is going to help you for geography section for both and prelims as well as mains examination. So yes, before starting the study of any section of our syllabus, what is important? It is important to know syllabus of that section. For geography, it is part of our GS1 paper, right? And in the trend analysis session, we talked about how much marks are dedicated for geography in GS1 paper out of 250. Yes, good evening Prajwal. Online students, those who are joining live on YouTube, good evening everyone. You can ask your queries in the comment box. So how many marks are dedicated out of 250? We have seen since 2017, UPSC has consistently allocated 100 marks out of 250 in GS1 paper. 4 10 markers and 4 15 markers. Now let's first briefly see the syllabus. So in syllabus, generally I tell students that we can divide the syllabus in 4 parts, 4 prominent topics or areas of our syllabus. First one is, we can say, world physical geography. So this world physical geography includes the physical geography of world as well as India. So there is no separate mention that India physical, ऐसा कुछ mention नहीं किया है. So that's why the question of monsoon, Purvaiya this year, right? Or the question also from the physical geography in terms of landform, how the fjords are formed. ऐसा question आया था this year, right? You must have gone through questions. We are going to discuss these questions in detail today. Okay, so world physical geography includes physical geography of world as well as India. Now, physical geography can be divided into different aspects. One, geomorphology, which talks about, which can say, evolution of different landforms, how the endogenic and exogenic forces are interplaying with each other to, we can say that, form the present landscape on the earth's surface, different landforms. And that's why the question, how the fjords are formed, geomorphology. Second, climatology. Now this year's question, Purvaiya, monsoon. Okay, why southwest monsoon is called Purvaiya or easterlies in Bhojpur region? This was the question. So basically it is climatology, but climatology of India. Okay, one question was like geomorphology and let's say landform. One question was from climatology. The third aspect is oceanography. So there was no question this year, but if you see in past, UPSC has prominently asked questions like ocean currents, tides, or we can say that ocean currents पे 3 बार question repeat हुआ है. You must have gone through PYQs. So oceanography, they will ask this one. But we can link this oceanography as a part of marine resources or the resources of coastal regions. And there comes our exam question, although it is part of natural resources also. But this year's question, what are the resource potential, what is the resource potential of coastal regions of India? This was the question, right? It is to some extent linked to oceanography also, right? But at the same time, it is basically the question from natural resources, coastal areas, ठीक है. Now fourth is biogeography. What is biogeography? It is dealing with flora and fauna and its conservation. Biogeography. This year's question paper, what are the factors, or discuss the factors related to, or we can say responsible for variations in natural vegetation in India. Natural vegetation, biogeography.
So isn't it the part of environment section?
No, there is separate environment geography part after this. Okay, as a discipline of, we can say, physical geography, it is separate biogeography part. Environmental geography or the ecological concepts has emerged as a separate branch out of geography. It is also sometimes called as environmental geography, but this specifically talks about flora and fauna only. Okay, fine. So this includes physical geography, India, world, दोनों होगा इसमें. The second part, important part of our syllabus is distribution of key natural resources across the world, including South Asia and Indian subcontinent. That means world as well as India. World as well as India. Natural resources. Now natural resources is a very wider term. Okay, it includes biological resources, it includes we can say that mineral resources, it includes energy resources. Okay, so it includes in general resources like water resources also. This year's question, how let's say why different countries or different parts of the world are facing let's say crisis of water availability as well as accessibility. This was the question. Water resources, we can say that natural resource. So mineral resources, generally we tend to restrict our interpretation of natural resources to only mineral resources. But natural resource includes flora and fauna also. Okay, wildlife is also a natural resource. Vegetation is also a natural resource. We have to understand and interpret in a broader manner. That's why next year, whenever you are preparing for this particular topic, you will prepare those resources also. Understood? So this one. Along with that, the third important part of our syllabus, factors responsible for location of primary, secondary and tertiary sector industries in various parts of the world, including India. Say they are writing in this bracket, including India. That means world as well as India. Now factors responsible for location of primary, secondary, tertiary economic activities. So primary activities or primary sector includes, yes, agriculture and allied activities. Right, agriculture and allied activities including fisheries, horticulture, everything is involved there, primary activities. What is secondary sector? Manufacturing. Okay, secondary sector, manufacturing industries. Then tertiary is service industry. Service industry like IT industry, transport, tourism, so health sector. So we can say tertiary sector.
Businesses.
Yes, financial businesses. So basically service sector, service providers. It is not involving manufacturing of goods. Manufacturing of goods, यहाँ पे secondary में आता, like food processing industry and all kind of industries.
It's a business, but it will come into secondary.
No, business also includes service provision. No, so that will come in tertiary. Okay, business activities is basically economic activities. Okay, so those activities which involve the production of basic resources, we can say, or basic things which are not processed, primary. When it is processing of those goods, it is secondary, and this is directly service provider. Like I am teaching here to you, basically I am providing service. It is part of tertiary sector. Right, same is like ITs, let's say industries is the electronic services. So now you are getting the idea here that what kind of services or part of industries are involved in primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector, and the question can be of any of these. Okay, now this year's question, which was related to human development and economic development, belong to this part of your syllabus. Although it was not directly related to primary, secondary, tertiary, but it was applied in nature. In trend analysis, we talked about nature of questions, static applied, current applied. So applied in a sense that you will not get answer to that question in any direct book or at any one place. Applied means you have to gather the information, knowledge about that from different sources and then apply according to demand of the question. That is applied nature of question, right? So we'll discuss that question also. The fourth important part of our syllabus is important geophysical phenomena, like different kinds of natural hazards. Different kinds of natural hazards, like we have mentioned here earthquakes, tsunami, volcanic activities, cyclones. Now this year's question, which was talking about the natural hazard preparedness in the coastal areas, the second part of that question, natural hazards. Okay, there was this question related to climate change and its impact on food security in tropical countries. See this part, geographical features and location changes in the critical geographical features like water bodies and ice caps, flora and fauna, and effects of such changes. So climate change means basically changes in critical geographical features happening because of climate change and their impact, how these, let's say, changes are impacting different aspects of human life. So food security, it is also very important, and it is not specifically talking about India, rather tropical countries. It is talking about tropical countries. So now you have understood how we can divide the syllabus. Accordingly, we should prepare our notes. In the end, I will talk about this, how to prepare notes and all. Okay? Okay. Now let's go in details of how the UPSC is asking questions. In that trend analysis video, we talked about how UPSC is giving weightage to geography section. So I told you since 2017, 100 marks every year. 4 questions from 10 marks, 4 questions from 15 marks. Very clear. We expect that this is continued in future. This year also they have asked the same thing. Alright. Now the more weightage is given to which part of our syllabus? Largely this one, geophysical phenomenon. You can see the number of questions till the date. More number of questions are asked. So climate change and all these things every year UPSC asks, or one or more natural hazard they will ask. Like last year they asked color coded system of cyclone management, right? So it was related to geophysical phenomena, cyclone. Getting this? So more questions from this. Then the second largest number of questions, natural resources. The third largest from the physical geography, and then the industries. Accordingly, we should give more weightage in our preparation also. Okay? Now, let's go in details of each and every question, because nature of question we have talked in the trend analysis. If you have not watched that video, you can watch in the Lukmaan IAS playlist, YouTube playlist. You will get the video also, trend analysis of all subjects in one session itself, and separate sessions are also there. Now, the first question we will discuss. 10 marker, discuss the consequences of climate change on food security. Identify the keywords. The first thing after reading the question that you should do is identify the keywords, and if there are more than one part of the question, you should identify that also, and you can quickly mark this as like climate change, consequences of climate change, one part. On food security, second key term, and third key term is tropical countries. Identify the key term, because your answer will revolve around this. If you write anything peripheral beyond these things, then less marks. Okay. So consequences of climate change on food security in tropical countries. Understood. So quickly let me give reference to how we in Lukmaan IAS in ED lecture had covered this topic. In November month, we had this ED session. Editorial discussion sessions course we have at Lukmaan IAS. So current and contemporary topics we discuss from largely mains perspective. Look at the topic, how climate change is affecting food production over the world. Direct question. Okay. In the Hindu newspaper analysis video of November 16th, 2022, we had talked about same topic and we had given practice mains question. Look at the first question. Explain the link between climate change, food security and health. Discuss the impact of climate change on food security and health of the people. So health हटा दो इसमें, first part तो पूछा है question में. Getting this idea. So that means whatever we are discussing here at Lukmaan IAS is surely relevant. ठीक है. So and yes, it is basically coming in the examination that actually motivates us also. Let's discuss the subject matter of this question. How do we approach to this question? See, for any question we follow this IBC pattern, right? You must have done the writing practice. If you are not, let's say, involved in the writing practice, this is the time. Okay, still you have till the December end. Do writing practice, and it is very important. And at the end of this session, you will understand how writing practice to different kind of questions, brainstorming activity, and challenging your mind to deal with different kinds of questions. It is very important for this examination. Yes. Vijay, let's discuss this question now one by one. So, consequences of climate change on food security. Now, how do we introduce this? There are different, let's say, ways to introduce this question. Some students will give quality data related to how food insecurity is present in tropical countries, African countries, or even in India. India is a tropical country, right? So some part is there in tropics, no? We can say that tropical aspect is involved. So good quality data from any international report, let's say report by FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. If you find throughout year a quality data by any report by FAO regarding how food availability is getting impacted in tropical countries because of climate change, then you can mention that in the introduction itself. This is good introduction, but surely give reference to resource और कहाँ से आप source. ठीक है, mention the name of report or that institution. Okay. Another way to start the introduction is by defining the key terms. So defining climate change common term है आजकल के लिए, right? So better to define food security. So what is food security? What is food security? Food security is basically, yes, it involves three elements, right? Food security involves three elements. One of them is availability of food. Okay, throughout year, availability of food for everyone. It is part of food security. Second is food accessibility. So being available is not sufficient. It can be available in any part of the country. Yes, whether it is accessible by all people living in different regions of the country, whether it is accessible to all sections of the community, poor people, vulnerable sections, whether they have access to the food grains. This is also part of, we can say, food security. And third one is affordability, which is going to be missed by most of the students in this question. I am going to explain how it affects affordability also. Okay, affordability, that means how the prices of food grains are increasing. We are witnessing the high price or inflation, food inflation even in Indian economy. So when the food prices are very high, the poor are not going to afford the food grains. It affects their food security. So let's try to revolve all the answer around these three. How climate change affects food availability? Of course, it is going to affect the food availability. How? The first and foremost point that you can mention here is, due to higher atmospheric temperature, it is going to reduce the yield of those crops. The best example, last year what happened in the March and April months, especially in northern India, there were comparatively higher temperatures. Okay, unusually higher temperatures in northern India, and that led to reduced yield of wheat in Punjab and Haryana due to higher temperatures. Now such kind of higher temperatures are there because of climate change. Understood? And that is going to reduce the yield. When the reduced yield, that means availability of food grains is less itself. Production is less itself. Why? Crops are very sensitive to the temperature. Throughout their crop cycle, they need specific temperatures. And if it is variable and if it is not appropriate at that particular time period in the crop cycle, there will be crop failure. Right. Second important point, increased activity of pest in tropical countries because of higher atmospheric temperatures. Pest activity increases in higher temperatures. We learn this as we move from, let's say, equator to the higher latitudes, the temperature is declining, and that's why the pest activity, bacterial activity goes down. In tropical countries, there is more pest activity already, and due to higher temperatures, there will be more and more pest attacks. New diseases will emerge, crop diseases, and that will further reduce the overall yield. Availability is affected. Then climate change will result into more and more drought. The drought prone areas in tropical country, let's say countries, we have different desert and arid and semi-arid regions are already, we can say, drought prone areas. And because of variability of rainfall due to climate change, these become more and more drought prone. Whatever we are growing, or let's say farmers are sowing in the semi-arid region, let's say arid region में तो कर ही नहीं रहे, semi-arid regions में, there are more chances of crop failure due to droughts. Okay, so availability is getting impacted. So why drought is there means that means water availability is less for irrigation purpose. Okay, or even for rain-fed agriculture, it is less. Right, so crop failure, less availability. Getting this? Now, extreme weather events, again it is going to impact how? Let's say there is harvest time period and then there is suddenly hailstorm, complete crop. Okay, standing crop is completely collapsed because of, let's say, strong winds also, and because of, let's say, hails also, and that is again we can say loss of harvest. Food availability is impacted. Excess rainfall, unseasonal rainfall, it has become very frequent. Unseasonal rainfall, it is going to impact the harvest. Okay, this one. Then how it is going to affect? See, I am all discussing. You must have gone through several discussion videos. I am telling you. अब तक आपने देखे होंगे, 2-3 तो भी देखे होंगे, देखा है ना? Maximum faculties are discussing this only. See, it is saying that consequences, food security, you need to explain how it is impacting food availability, accessibility, affordability. Everyone knows that because of climate change, these things are happening. How do you link this to this? And provide some examples. This is also very important. Data examples in this paper. Right. Now, sea level rise. Now, what is happening because of sea level rise? Coastal areas are getting submerged. And because of that, what happens is the coastal plains are fertile plains. Like even in India, coastal plains are fertile plains and they are used for rice cultivation. And due to sea level rise, what will happen? The fertile land is now going to become infertile because of saline water is entering into soil. Getting this? What will happen because of that? Again, land area, which is a scarce resource. Land is a scarce resource in tropical countries like India, which is densely populated. Let's take example of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is that country जहाँ पे 5 मीटर अगर सी लेवल राइज होती है तो आधा बांग्लादेश पानी में हो जाएगा. It is low lying country. Getting this? And if there is sea level rise, what will happen to food security of Bangladesh? Understood? So coastal plains submergence, and because of that it is going to affect the food availability. Now the remaining points are, let's say, less significant. Desertification, again the extension of desert into, let's say, semi-arid or other regions, fertile regions. Because of that, the fertile land becoming desert. Again, area for cultivation is decreasing. Availability of, it is direct correlation. आपको ये बताने आना चाहिए कैसे हो रहा है. Okay, so this thing. Then along with that, can we say marine area, let's say marine food products like fish, it is also part of food security in coastal communities or coastal areas. They are dependent on fish, right? Now, because of, let's say, ocean acidification as a result of climate change, what happens is it is going to impact the corals. So corals are habitat of fish. Okay, and fish number is going to decline because of this ocean acidification, and that will affect the food availability for coastal communities in tropical countries. This correlation is also very important. Now, quickly also see the accessibility aspect and affordability aspect, which largely involves now human aspect. अब तक हमने ज़्यादातर ये physical aspect देखा है, physical geography वाला. Now, accessibility, very important. See, food accessibility depends on the physical barriers as well as human barriers. ठीक है, access बोल रहा है ना ये. So, access can be physical barrier, like for example, the communities in Northeast India. Just I am telling you example. So what happens there? Because of physical barriers, there are, let's say, lack of accessibility. Let's say there is a dense forest, lack of accessibility. These are, I am telling you, let's say, physical barriers. Now, how climate change impacts food accessibility? Any idea? नहीं. See, when the food availability is less, what will happen? More pressure on available food. More pressure on available food. Now, who will have this available food? Yes, who has the money, who has the resources, and who have immediate access. Those who are located farther from the production regions, they may face problems, right? Access aspect. Okay, so I was telling you human element, how it is involved here. Accessibility. Okay, so this thing, that means, so let's say climate change की वजह से क्या होने वाला है? There will be migration. Why? Because there is going to have lack of access to the food. Okay, lack of access to the food. वो वहां से लोग दूसरी तरफ जाते हैं. Okay, so tropical countries like African countries, we are witnessing large scale migration from one region to other region because of lack of access to the food. Third, ये छोटे छोटे पॉइंट्स है, देखो इसकी वजह से ही ये हो रहा है largely. ठीक है, ये कम है, and because of that this food affordability, this is to some extent problem. Why? Because again less availability of food grains, artificial. See, कोई भी डिमांड, इकोनॉमिक्स क्या बोलता है, कोई भी चीज कम हो तो उसकी अगर डिमांड ज्यादा हो तो इसकी प्राइस बढ़ जाती है. And when we have high prices of food grains, what will happen? The poor will not be having, or let's say it will not be affordable for the poor. This major aspect you should write here. Poor people, and most of the tropical countries, they have poor people. African countries, South Asian countries, so most of the poor people are lying where? They are not lying in higher latitudes. वहाँ पे तो developed countries है सारी. Most of the poor people are lying where? In the tropical regions, and that's why ये factor भी लिखना है. Most of the students will miss on this. Understood? Now, after writing all these points, we should be also mentioning, see, it is 10 marker and there is very less scope for the students to write way forward. Okay, in such kind of question, it is not asking way forward as such, but we should mention here briefly. We should mention briefly way forward. As a part of conclusion also you can mention, or in general also you can give, let's say, यहाँ पे आप way forward भी बोल सकते हैं. ओके, डिस्कस बोला है तो आप मेंशन कर सकते हैं वे फॉरवर्ड, राइट? सो यू शुड टॉक अबाउट डीलिंग विद दिस सिचुएशन एज मिटिगेशन एंड अडॉप्टेशन. Most prominent solution when we give to climate change is mitigation and adaptation. Use these keywords, right? In mitigation, what you can talk about is reducing the impact of all these events. How we can reduce? We can reduce by, we can say, अब यहाँ पे क्या होने वाला है, ड्रॉट्स होने वाला है, लेस अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ वाटर, देन फोकस ऑन प्रिसीजन फार्मिंग. Precision farming involves use of, let's say, different technologies, sensors, so that optimum utilization of resources is there. Optimum utilization, water resource, soil as a resource, optimum utilization. Micro irrigation, promoting micro irrigation, you can mention. Okay, so water will be less, so micro irrigation can be promoted. Then we can say that specifically developing certain crops, genetically modified crops, which are pest resistant, drought prone varieties of rice, paddy are being developed. Why? Because of increase in pest. Drought prone varieties, saline prone or salinity prone tolerant varieties of rice are being developed. You can give that example. Pokkali rice variety of Kerala, you can give. Naturally it is available, which is, we can say that, tolerant to the high salinity. क्योंकि ये क्या होने वाला है, सी लेवल राइज होने वाला है. ओके, सो अल्टीमेटली यू कैन से दैट द ब्रॉडर टर्म यू कैन यूज इज क्लाइमेट रेजिलिएंट एग्रीकल्चर. द टर्म क्लाइमेट रेजिलिएंट एग्रीकल्चर, यूज दिस इन योर आंसर इज अ वे फॉरवर्ड. Very good. Climate smart agriculture, this term can be also used. Can we write about El Nino effects in climate change on food security? El Nino is not directly related to climate change. At present, the scientists or the geographers, they have not yet established the perfect correlation between climate change and whether there is, let's say, changes happening in El Nino and La Nina because of climate change. Although there may be relation, but it has not been established yet. तो उसको मत touch करिए अभी. Okay, so you can tell extreme weather events, increase in frequency of cyclones, and because of that how the coastal areas are flooded, and because of that loss of crop, वो भी लिख सकते हैं आप. ठीक है. Yes, untimely rains, you can mention that part. Hari Krishna, what you are saying, due to climate change it has impacted the crops, financial instability. Yes, of course, import of foods that is happening. Then negative impact on the balance of payment. See, we are moving towards now economics. Balance of payment मत बताइए वहाँ पे, है ना. This simply talking about the food security of because of climate change. Okay, it is 150 words. Let's not talk about peripheral things, right? So climate smart agriculture, climate resilient agriculture, this you can provide as a way forward here. How we can focus on food security by protecting this, by ensuring food availability. How we can ensure that? Through this. Despite of climate change, we can ensure this one. Okay. Now let's talk about next question. Is it clear now, this question? ठीक है. Next, very we can say predictable. UPSC in past have asked frequently question related to water resources. Okay, either in GS1 or GS3 water resource जरूर पूछता है UPSC. ठीक है. So here very simple, why is the world today confronted with the crisis of availability and access to the fresh water? There are two key terms. One, crisis of availability, and second, crisis of accessibility. Key terms, identify the key terms. Okay, crisis of availability, second is crisis of accessibility. हो गया आंसर, बॉडी पार्ट का स्ट्रक्चरिंग हमें पता चल गया है. Even we were predicting such kind of question. We in our test series have added such kind of question like analyze the importance of one water approach for comprehensive, resilient and sustainable management of water resources. So this was much in news, one water approach. It's a way forward to water crisis. Okay. Then critically evaluate the impact of shrinking lakes of the world due to climate change and human activities. So Anyway, it was always in news, and UPC generally asks question related to water resources one way or other way. So let's talk about IBC, intro, body, conclusion of this question. In introduction, again, the prominent way to start is data. Quality data facts related to how there is scarcity. How there is scarcity in different parts of the world. First way. Second way, give any prominent or stark example. Like in India, last to last year, what had happened in Shimla? Suddenly there was no water available, for fresh water available for drinking purpose, for utility purpose. Okay, and people of the city face lot of problems. Okay, so although it was a kind of management issue, water resource management, but at the same time availability of fresh water is becoming more and more challenged. There are several reports, and mention that data fact here regarding those reports. One of the report says that by 2025, one of the report by UNESCO, it is saying that by 2025 more than 50% of the cities of world will face water scarcity. Such kind of data you can mention here. Getting this? Yes, one thing I missed out in the initial part itself. We are providing you model answers of these 8 questions as an attachment in the description of this video. Okay, you can download it and read it later on, keep with you for revision purpose also. These, let's say, model answers are detailed model answers with some examples, data also. Even though I may miss some kind of data examples here while discussing, you can find that in the model answer. But here I am keeping focus on IBC. Okay, I am, let's say, brainstorming here about these questions. Now in body part, simply divide the body part in crisis of availability and crisis of accessibility. So we have to discuss the reasons. It is saying that why. It is saying why. First of all, let's talk about the reasons for crisis of availability. Right. So when we read NCERT, 6th standard, 7th standard NCERT, there is data related to fresh water and saline water and where it is located. Even in prelims there was this question, I guess in 2020 or 21 में एक question आया था, fresh water resources, how they are, let's say, distributed, whether it is more available in the polar ice caps or we can say that lakes and rivers. इस तरीके से question था. Groundwater. So we know that we have only 3% of fresh water resource and remaining 97% is seawater, saline water. Is it true? Basic fact hai, right? So only 3% of water is fresh water that can be used for human consumption, be it for drinking water, be it for daily chores or agriculture and industries. फ्रेश वाटर ही यूज करते हैं ना हम, इंडस्ट्री हो या एग्रीकल्चर हो, पीने के लिए हो, राइट. एंड दैट लिमिटेड 3% इज फर्दर डिवाइडेड एज पोलर आइस कैप्स और ग्लेशियर्स, हिमालयन ग्लेशियर्स एंड ग्राउंड वाटर. मोस्ट ऑफ दिस इज ट्रैप्ड इन पोलर आइस कैप्स and groundwater, and the water that is flowing on the earth, or we can say accessible through lakes, that is around only 1 to 2%. You can imagine that there is already limited fresh water. Crisis of availability I am talking, and now we are going to basically, or we are affecting this limited fresh water resource. How? Excess use in agriculture. Now you tell me, most of the fresh water supply or consumption in India, where it is happening? Very good. 80% of the water consumption is happening in agriculture. 80%, you can imagine, and most of it is done through flood irrigation method. Flood irrigation method मतलब क्या है? वहां पे मोटर ऑन कर दी, चलने दो, बहने दो, कितना हो रहा है कोई टेंशन नहीं है, रात को लगा दिया, सुबह जाके वो बंद कर रहा है मोटर, राइट. So that means this is faulty irrigation method. Most of this water is either runoff getting into runoff or it is evaporated. Crops are taking very less amount of water that is supplied. That means we are wasting that water. Okay, irrigation. Then water pollution. So already limited water and that we are polluting. You can understand. बचपन में हमने water body को कोई visit किया होगा तो वो कितना pure, कितना clean रहा होगा. हमने शायद उसमें swim भी किया होगा हमारे native place पे. क्या आज हमारी हिम्मत होती है वहां पे जाके स्विमिंग करने की? वो नदी में नहीं होती है ना, वो नहर में, because of water pollution. That means that water is now not suitable for human consumption, right? And basically we are reducing availability because of this pollution. Pollution from industrial effluents, the pollution for thermal power plants, the pollution from urban sewage. ठीक है, ये सारा कहाँ जा रहा है? नदियों में जा रहा है, लेक्स में जा रहा है, वेटलैंड्स में जा रहा है, खराब कर रहा है हम सब पानी, फ्रेश वाटर सप्लाई, राइट. तो यस, ऑफ कोर्स इरिगेशन में हमने क्या किया है, फिर वाटर इंटेंसिव क्रॉप्स ग्रो करना शुरू किया है, लाइक शुगर केन, पैडी कल्टीवेशन, पंजाब हरियाणा रीजन, एक्सेस एक्सट्रैक्शन ऑफ ग्राउंड वाटर. यहाँ पे मैं बताने वाला था आपको, ग्राउंड वाटर डिप्लीशन इज हैपनिंग, फ्रेश वाटर, we are depleting groundwater beyond the rechargeable levels. ठीक है, so this is problematic. Climate change, further it is aggravating the problem. Okay, so how it is aggravating the problem? Due to changes in hydrological cycle, variations in rainfall. Okay, generally we know that rainfall happens in a concentrated 4 months in monsoon time period. Okay, it is not evenly distributed throughout the year. Right, and when we have this rainfall in those 4 months, what happens is it is not uniform, variability is increasing, and that's why we are not able to store that properly. Along with that, climate change is impacting. Why? Drought, कम rainfall आएगा, पानी ही नहीं रहेगा, lack of water availability. And if it is excess rainfall, it is flowing as a runoff, getting into river. River is entering that water into ocean. It is not fruitful for human consumption. No, climate change is impacting in this manner. Global warming. When we have higher atmospheric temperature, it will evaporate more and more water from these water bodies. फिर क्या? पानी चला जाएगा. ठीक है. Then variability of rainfall, I told you. Deforestation. How it is affecting availability. See, when we have forest or trees planted along the slope, that will absorb that water, no? Now, when there are no trees, what will happen? If the rainfall is happening, it will continuously go as a runoff. वो river में चला जाएगा, river तो जा रही है ocean में, तो ground water recharge नहीं होगा. There will not be ground water recharge. This is problematic. Then we have desertification. So of course it is going to reduce the soil moisture. It is going to reduce the soil moisture. That is going to create the problem. ये availability के main points थे. Now accessibility. Accessibility here more of the human actions or human interference factors. Like for example, high demand due to population growth. So there is stress on available water resources. They are already limited and we are polluting or reducing that. इधर से population बढ़ रहा है, demand बढ़ रहा है और available resource घटता जा रहा है. Problem of access. Okay, limited sources, more demand, more number of people are demanding. So what will happen to that? Accessibility will be the issue. Okay, because some people will not afford that limited scarce resource. The commercialization of water resource is now new challenge. ठीक है, हम देखते हैं अभी अगर आप दिल्ली में रह रहे हैं तो देख रहे हैं ना, पानी की बोतल कैंस में देते हैं, उसका प्राइसेस बढ़ता जा रहा है, राइट? So basically those who are not able to afford that, and if they are drinking simply the tapped water, that means they are not drinking the clean water. ठीक है, तो उनके और health impact, out of pocket expenditure, basically poverty. Poor people are not having access बी इट अर्बन पुअर और रूरल पुअर, ठीक है, दोनों को पानी का एक्सेस नहीं है, ठीक है। गांव में तो अलग ही प्रॉब्लम्स है, देयर इज लैक ऑफ एक्सेस ड्यू टू सोशल बैरियर्स, कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन। आज भी तालाब से पानी लेना है या वेल से पानी लेना है तो छूत अछूत प्रॉब्लम, अनटचेबिलिटी, एंड दिस इज वी कैन से स्टिल कॉमन इन रूरल एरियाज। यू आर बैरियर टू एक्सेस, इट इज बैरियर टू एक्सेस, नो एक्सेसिबिलिटी वी आर टॉकिंग है, बट ये बाद में लिखिए, सोशल एस्पेक्ट है, ज्योग्राफी है ना, तो ये बाद में लिखिए, राइट। फर्स्ट टॉक अबाउट दिस, देन poverty, poor management of water resources, this is also important. Let's say for example, if the urban water bodies are there and if those water bodies are not appropriately managed, like for example, if let's say there is urban sewage is allowed to enter into that water body, this is mismanagement, no, it should be strictly banned, right. It is in the, let's say, authority power of those local bodies, government. Second, let's say there is rainfall happening in the catchment area and then there is dam. Let's say the water is allowed to simply flow through that dam during the rainfall time period. That means that is not stored. If the water is not stored, then how it can be used in next 8 months? Mismanagement, poor management of water resources. This is problematic. Again, human factor, wars and conflict. Give example of Africa, give example of Lake Chad, give example of let's say tropical African countries where the gunmen are basically protecting the water bodies. वहां पे जो है गन लेके खड़ा रहता है बंदा, कोई वाटर चुरा ना ले, इलीगली वो एक्सेस नहीं दे। ये क्या है? प्रॉब्लम ऑफ एक्सेसिबिलिटी, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स, हाँ, माइग्रेशन इज हैपनिंग बिकॉज ऑफ दैट। Okay, so wars and conflicts, because of lack of access to the water, they are migrating from that place. Lake Chad is shrinking because of climate change, and because of that, the 4 countries where the area of Lake Chad is located, they are fighting with each other. ठीक है? Then natural disasters, again it is going to create problem of access. How? Natural disasters, drought is natural disaster, right? Flood you can give example, but generally हम बोलेंगे कि flood में तो पानी available होता है, हाँ, yes, drinking वाला problem, right, very good. That example you can give, like floods in Delhi, Yamuna, urban floods, that creates problem, artificial problem, मैन मेड। क्यों? वाटर ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट वॉज क्लोज्ड, 2 दिन के लिए पानी नहीं आ रहा था दिल्ली में, राइट? सो दिस इज डिजास्टर। लैक ऑफ फंड्स टू डेवलप इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर लाइक डैम्स, पाइपलाइंस, स्पेशली अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज, पुअर कंट्रीज। The governments, they don't have such kind of resources, and that's why they are not able to provide piped water supply to the people. Dams, they are not able to build the dams so that they can have storage of whatever the rainfall that is happening, that water is stored and that is used for later time period. ये नहीं हो रहा है वहाँ पे। चलो इंडिया में तो हो रहा है, but in those countries, especially African countries, वहाँ पे नहीं हो रहा है। ठीक है? So why the world today is confronted with this crisis? These are some issues. You should talk availability and accessibility separately. Most of the students will write this combined. The problem of structure, those who will write separate, half mark extra. Structuring, more organize the content that examiner will see, more marks you are going to fetch. ठीक है? Yes. So affecting hydrological cycle, yes, that is true. Hydrological cycle हमने climate change में यहाँ पे बताया है. Now how do you conclude this? By giving some kind of futuristic conclusion. How we can deal with this issue? How we can deal with this issue? Simply focus more on water conservation, no? Water resource conservation, use this term. How do we have this water conservation? Rainwater harvesting. water is limited resource, no, तो use the existing water, grey water treatment and use जो हमारे घरों में बर्तन घिसने के लिए, कपड़े धोने के लिए जो यूज होता है पानी, यूज होने के बाद जो पानी निकलता है वो ग्रे वाटर बोलते हैं उसको. दैट वाटर कैन बी यूज्ड इन द बैकयार्ड्स, ठीक है, जो झाड़ियों को पानी देने के लिए, कहीं पे भी. इट कैन बी ट्रीटेड इन द रूरल एरियाज एंड इट कैन बी फर्दर यूज्ड फॉर एग्रीकल्चर इरिगेशन पर्पस. Okay, grey water we can say use. Then thereafter you can mention in water conservation, simply talk about micro irrigation again, precision farming. Then further you can talk about cooperation among different countries. ये जो wars and conflicts वाला जो है, see accessibility is going to be challenge. Upper riparian and lower riparian states, like let's say tomorrow on Brahmaputra river China is building already several dams. क्या होगा, पानी आएगा ही नहीं इंडिया में, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होगा कि नहीं, प्रॉब्लम होगा कि नहीं एक्सेसिबिलिटी का. गेटिंग दिस, अवेलेबिलिटी एक्सेसिबिलिटी का प्रॉब्लम होगा. देयर शुड बी मोर एंड मोर कोऑपरेशन, लाइक वी हैव इंडस वाटर ट्रीटी इंडिया पाकिस्तान, दैट इज इम्प्लीमेंटेड, अच्छे से इम्प्लीमेंट किया गया है. And that's why the problem of availability and accessibility is still not faced by India as well as Pakistan. Getting this? So cooperation, international cooperation among different countries, upper riparian and lower riparian countries. Now most of the students will miss this. ठीक है, क्योंकि बहुत सारे मेजर रिवर्स जो है वो क्रॉस कंट्रीज है, ठीक है, कॉन्टिनेंटल रिवर्स है, एक ही कंट्री से फ्लो नहीं करता है, बहुत सारे कंट्री से. तो जहां जहां ऐसे रिवर्स फ्लो होगी वहां पर क्राइसिस होगा अवेलेबिलिटी एंड एक्सेसिबिलिटी का. तो ये कोऑपरेशन की जरूरत है, ठीक है. सो इन कंक्लूजन यू कैन गिव सच काइंड ऑफ फ्यूचरिस्टिक solution here. Let's talk about next question. A little bit difficult, I would say. थोड़ा सा डिफिकल्ट था. Yes, can we mention about desalination plants and water treatment plants? Yes, you can mention grey water treatment. I told you there you can mention the water treatment plant. This is also good solution. We can say that desalination plants, we have 97% of saline water. But at present, the technology that is involved in desalination of water, saline water, that technology is not, we can say, well developed. So it is not affordable also for common people, right? At present, we have one plant in Chennai for desalination. That is good thing, but it is not yet commercially affordable or viable, we can say. Commercially viable. It should be, let's say, developed in advanced stage so that it becomes more and more commercially viable to be implemented in all parts of coastal areas. So now that will help. ठीक है, अगर टेक्नोलॉजी उस तरीके से डेवलप होगी तो अच्छी बात है. At present, the technology that we are using, we are boiling the water and separating that all the, let's say, minerals that are there in that saline water. Then again it is, we can say, energy consuming process. Energy consuming means that will be heat released. Heat release means that will again contributing to global warming. तो ऐसा कुछ वायबल सॉल्यूशन उसमें निकलना चाहिए जिससे क्या होगा कि more and more let's say common people can use this at decentralized level. That will be helpful. ठीक है, हरे कृष्णा. Right. Okay, let's talk about next question. How are the fjords formed? Geomorphology, landforms, 11th standard NCERT. It only mentions about glacial erosional landforms as fjords. How they are formed in detail, it is not mentioned. That's why I have told you little bit difficult. Those who are having geography optional subject, easily they can attempt this. नहीं, term mention किया हुआ है NCERT में. 11th standard physical geography landforms chapter. Glacial erosional landforms, fjords. मेंशन किया हुआ है. ठीक है, फिर नई NCERT में नहीं है क्या, जो अपडेट हुए हैं 2022 में अपडेट हुए हैं NCERTs. Okay, it is mentioned for sure because we used to read NCERT when we used to prepare for UPSC, तो हमें याद है वो था उसमें. ठीक है, So fjords, what is this landform? So first of all, you should introduce, there are again two methods. One, you can simply briefly mention about what are fjords by mentioning like simply it is a glacial erosional landform. Glacial erosional landform. Okay, you can mention some other landforms, glacial erosional landforms and depositional landform also, like moraines we have, or creek cirque we have, horns, especially U-shaped valley. Basically this is U-shaped valley only. I will tell you how. U-shaped valleys are formed by glaciers. In introduction you talk about this, and then in body part start explaining how they are. One method. Second method is that simply you can mention that about glaciers and how we can say the various glacial landforms are formed. Erosional and briefly 2-3 lines. The role of glaciers as agent of erosion. Agent of erosion. One of the method you can, let's say, or simply start explaining about fjords. Okay. So again 150 words लिखना है, तो again no scope for writing the peripheral things. So what are fjords? Basically fjords are U-shaped valleys formed by glaciers during glacial age, or we can say ice age, during ice age, and later when there was warming period, due to sea level rise, sea water is getting added into these valleys. Okay, sea water is getting added into these valleys. Let's understand how it is formed also through this diagram here. Okay, so let's say this is glacier, and during ice age what used to happen is most of the water was getting trapped and freezed on the land. So in the higher latitudes where there was more and more cooling as compared to present day, सबसे ज़्यादा तो वहाँ पे कूलिंग होगा आइस एज में, सारा ही फ्रीज हो गया. Okay, including ocean water surface itself. So at that time whatever the water was there on the land, it was, we can say, frozen, and glaciers were directly entering into sea. Even at present some of the glaciers in Norway, Iceland, Alaska, they still directly enter into sea. Okay, now this was the case in ice age. Most of these glaciers were directly entering into sea, and at that time because of most of the water was trapped on the land, the sea level was very less, or we can say low. The sea level was low. यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं आप, यहाँ पे इस तरीके से होगा ये ग्लेशियर. Now what happened when there was warming period? Like at present it is warming period. Okay, Pleistocene glaciation during 200 or 250 million years ago, that Pleistocene glaciation हम बोल सकते हैं ice age. Ice age movies भी देखी होगी आपने, सभी तरफ ice ही होता है. हाँ, so right, so at that time the sea level was, as compared to present, it was low, and over the period now when there was warming period, slowly these glaciers were melting and retreating. ठीक है, रिट्रीटिंग मतलब क्या है, ये पहले यहाँ पे टच कर रहे थे ना, तो अभी ये पीछे पीछे जा रहे हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि अभी वार्मिंग हो रहा है, तो ये मेल्ट हो रहा है. मेल्ट हो रहा है कहाँ से? स्टार्ट यहाँ से मेल्ट करना शुरू करता है, यहाँ तक वो अभी भी है, ऊपर तक जहाँ हाइट है वहां पे अभी भी है बर्फ, ग्लेशियर्स, बट नीचे का अभी मेल्ट हो चुका. ओके, when this glacier was present and when it was retreating, it was eroding its bottom. लैंड, इट वॉज इरोडिंग इट्स बॉटम. अब इरोड कर रहा है तो वहां पे खड्डा तैयार कर दिया इसने. अब खड्डा कैसे तैयार करेगा? इस तरह, क्योंकि वो यू शेप वैली तैयार करता है. इरोजन बाय द ग्लेशियर क्रिएट्स यू शेप वैली. वी लर्न दिस इन एनसीईआरटी, right? And as this glacier started retreating, it creates a channel like this and U shape. ग्लेशियर वापस जा रहा है यहां से, तो ये ऐसे होता है ना कि ये अब्रेजन करते करते ऐसे जा रहा है, तो इसलिए ये क्या हो रहा है? यू शेप वैली. यू शेप वैली विल हैव स्टिफ स्लोप एज कंपेयर टू वी शेप वैली. हाथ को देखिए, ये वी शेप वैली है, यू शेप वैली स्टिफ स्लोप. आई विल शो इन दिस फोटोग्राफ किस तरीके से ये स्टिफ वॉल्स दिख रहे हैं. ठीक है, ग्लेशियल वैलीज. नाउ ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम व्हाट विल हैपन? These glaciers are still melting and feeding the fresh water, and over the period of time sea level also we can say rose because of warming. अब ये क्या हो रहा है? सी लेवल जो है इस खड्डे में आके वैली में घुस रहा है और यहां से फ्रेश वाटर भी आ रहा है. सो दैट मीन्स नाउ दिस इज द फीचर कॉल्ड एज fjords. This is the feature called as fjords, which is basically the area where seawater is also mixing and the water that is let's say melted from the glacier, it is mixing fresh water. ठीक है, हाँ, ग्लेशियर्स के नीचे, मतलब ये ग्लेशियर्स यहाँ पे अभी ऊपर तक चले गए रिट्रीट. अब ये पानी उसका मेल्ट होके आ रहा है और इधर इमीडिएटली सी वाटर भी है, तो ये मिक्स हो रहा है अभी. These are called fjords. Understood? And how they are formed? Understood? Okay. The second part is a little bit tricky, but although most of the students must have attempted because it is generic content. Okay. Why they are picturesque? Okay. Why they are most picturesque areas of the world? UPSC is saying that they are picturesque. That means it must be picturesque. अगर आपने देखा भी नहीं होगा तो भी. But I am showing you here one photograph. Here the person is standing and watching the scenery, and you can see it is truly beautiful. What you are observing here? Landscape, beautiful landscape, pristine nature. Pristine nature means it is still undisturbed by human activity. That's why it is beautiful. Why we go to Himalayas in Uttarakhand? To watch the pristine beauty, है ना, beauty of the nature, landscape, beautiful landscape, this wall-like structure, and then the blue water, it is beautiful. Okay, beautiful landscape. Third is biodiversity in terms of flora and fauna, unique kind of flora and fauna in this particular let's say region where sea water and fresh water is getting mixed. Okay. So unique kind of fish, marine species are found in this region, biodiversity. Then we can say that recreation. So different kinds of sports activities like scuba diving or sea surfing. Sea surfing देखते हैं ना आपने? Surfing करते हैं, देखो इस पे बैठ के, right? So these are adventurous activities, tourist destinations. We can say these are fjords. If you have seen GOT, Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones देखा है, उसमें बहुत सारे जो let's say episodes है या फिर जो हम बोल सकते हैं कि शूटिंग हुआ है ना उसका, तो वो नॉर्वे और उस रीजन का हुआ है. जहाँ पे भी कोस्टल रीजन्स में उन्होंने दिखाया होगा ना, बेसिकली ऐसे स्टिप वॉल्स दिखाई गए कोस्टल एरियाज. Basically these are example of fjords. They are pristine beauty. देखने में बहुत अच्छा दिखता है वो. ठीक है, so that's why they have asked this. You can mention these 3-4 generic points. That's all. Now those students who do not know about fjords, they must have attempted only second part at least. आपने 2 मार्क तो लेके आना है. यहाँ पे generic points तो लिख के आएंगे ना आप. आपको शायद fjords नहीं पता है. Don't bluff here. If you bluff simply by writing it is the depositional landform of glaciers, गलत हो जाएगा. आपको एग्जैक्टली पता होना चाहिए. फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी इज रिगार्डिंग कॉन्सेप्ट, रिगार्डिंग स्पेसिफिक नॉलेज, राइट. तो फर्स्ट पार्ट आप स्किप कर दीजिए, नहीं आता है तो, या सिंपली इतना पता है कि इट इज इरोजनल लैंडफॉर्म, उतना ही लिखिए. हाउ दे आर फॉर्म अगर नहीं पता है तो ब्लफ मत करिए, इट विल इम्पैक्ट नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर मेंस एग्जामिनेशन. अटेम्प्ट सेकंड पार्ट ओनली, नो डायरेक्टली, यहाँ पे 2 मार्क दे देंगे आपको जरूर. ठीक है. सो इन कंक्लूजन व्हाट यू कैन मेंशन, you can link climate change. Recently it was in news also, many of the fjords which were till the date not impacted by the climate change, now the impact of climate change is visible in those areas also. ऐसे reports studies आए हैं, you can link that in the end in conclusion. So that means till the date it was not impacted by the human activities directly or indirectly. Now indirectly it is going to get impacted because of climate change. So we need to protect these particular, let's say unique features, geomorphological features, especially in higher latitudes. ठीक है. तो ये इस तरीके से आप conclude कर सकते हैं. Is it fine? Any question related to this? Next question. Purvaya. I'm telling you, those who are from Bihar or UP or Jharkhand, except those students or aspirants, other students may not be even knowing about Purvaya, what it is saying. But despite of that, most of the students must have attempted this, and that too correctly. Kaise? If you know the concept of monsoon and how the southwest monsoon is divided into generally 2 branches, one is Bay of Bengal, other is Arabian Sea, and how this Bay of Bengal branch is traveling in this manner and further getting divided into 2 branches here in Bangladesh region, we can say, and one is traveling to the northeast, giving excess torrential rainfall there, and one is shifting to the left. This is because of the wall-like structure that we have, Himalayas. Okay, the winds are flowing along the surface, suddenly they see that there is Himalayas. तो वो of course, तो यहाँ पर देखिए, what is this region, Purvaya, or we can say this particular Bhojpur region they are saying. Key term is Purvaya, second key term is Bhojpur region. Bhojpur region is basically some part of Bihar, eastern UP and Jharkhand. Some parts of Bihar, eastern UP and Jharkhand. So that is called as Bhojpur region, and you can see that in this region the winds are coming from east. So winds are named according to the source direction. जिस डायरेक्शन से वो आ रहे हैं उनको उसका नाम दिया जाता है. Why we call them as southwest monsoon? They are coming from southwest. ठीक है ना. तो यहाँ पे वो दिखता है इस तरीके से, ईस्ट से आ रहा है. That's why the easterlies or Purvaya. Very simple explanation, and most of the students must have written this correctly. ठीक है, नहीं भी पता है तो, है ना, लॉजिकली आप लिख सकते हैं. Yes. Now after this let's attend the second part. ठीक है, आप यहाँ पे इंट्रोडक्शन सिंपली साउथ वेस्ट मॉनसून के बारे में लिख सकते हैं. ठीक है ना. Like southwest monsoon is very important for not only the agriculture sector but overall economy of India. Simple sweet introduction. ठीक है. Now in body part, first part you have addressed this. Now there is second part. देखिए आप देख रहे हैं आपको कि 2 पार्ट में डिवाइड किया हुआ है क्वेश्चंस को, है ना. तो फर्स्ट पार्ट इज Purvaya, सेकंड हाउ दिस डायरेक्शनल सीजन विंड्स सिस्टम इन्फ्लुएंस द कल्चरल एथोस ऑफ द रीजन. Now you may be saying ये ज्योग्राफी कहाँ से हो गया. Yes, of course we learn in NCERT how overall southwest monsoon affects the cultural life in India, socio-cultural life in India. There is separate points given in NCERT in monsoon chapter, Indian geography, 11th standard NCERT. जब climate of India हम पढ़ते हैं, okay, social cultural life in India. So whatever the impact that we have throughout India, the same impact will be in Bhojpur region only. Cultural aspects involve festivals, cuisine, folk dance and music, changes in the clothing pattern. Same is applied. Write generic points here. You may not be knowing specific things here. But in model answer, we have added some folk dances there, folk festivals also, some new cuisines, especially, let's say cooked during that time period. हाँ, मॉनसून टाइम पीरियड में होता है ना, तो वो भी वहां पे भी वही होता होगा ना. यूनिक काइंड ऑफ क्यूजिन्स ड्यूरिंग मॉनसून टाइम पीरियड, यूनिक काइंड ऑफ फेस्टिवल्स, or we can say specific deities are worshipped during the monsoon time period. Rain god is worshipped. So same thing you can mention here. तो as such यहाँ पे अगर आपको नहीं पता है specific content, but आपको ये points पता है, write this. You will get the average marks, but it is still good, that better than the let's say other students. आपने ये सही से लिखा है, यहाँ पे average लिखा है, 4-5 marks तो वो देगा ही. By drawing this map. मैप ड्रॉ करने का स्कोप है यहाँ पे, राइट. सो टू गेट मोर मार्क्स इन ज्योग्राफी, वन थिंग इज वेरी क्लियर, यू ड्रॉ डायग्राम्स एंड मैप्स इन योर आंसर. +1 इज फॉर श्योर. ठीक है. सो फॉलो दिस अप्रोच हियर, एंड इन कंक्लूजन व्हाट यू कैन मेंशन हियर. Simply you can mention that how southwest monsoon is changing its nature. हर चीज को ज्योग्राफी में क्लाइमेट चेंज से लिंक कर सकते हैं, ये माइंड में फिक्स करके चलो. ठीक है. अब ये तो क्लाइमेट का ही पार्ट है मॉनसून. नाउ दिस ईयर इटसेल्फ, हाउ साउथ वेस्ट मॉनसून वाज एवरेज, वी कैन से, और इन द रेंज ऑफ वॉट एवर द लॉन्ग पीरियड एवरेज दैट IMD गिव्स, बट द वेरिएशंस इन दोज 4 months. वेरिएशंस क्या किया इसने, जून में बहुत सारा बारिश, जुलाई में कम हो गया, अगस्त में कम हो गया, ज्यादा हो गया, एक्सेस हो गया, सितंबर में कम हो गया, फिर से थोड़ा सा ज्यादा हो गया जाते जाते. ठीक है. वेरिएशंस इन रेनफॉल, दिस इज ऑल्सो प्रॉब्लमैटिक. व्हाई? बिकॉज एट अ पर्टिकुलर टाइम पीरियड ऑफ द क्रॉप वी नीड सर्टेन अमाउंट ऑफ रेनफॉल. अगर वो चेंज होता रहेगा तो क्रॉप फेलियर, यानी कि हार्वेस्ट टाइम पे आप रेनफॉल होगा तो क्रॉप फेलियर, डिसीजेस बढ़ देंगे. सो दैट इज गोइंग टू बी चैलेंज, ऐसा आप बोल सकते हैं. ठीक है. फाइन, लेट्स टॉक अबाउट नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. नाउ वी आर शिफ्टिंग टू 15 मार्क्स, राइट. कमेंट ऑन रिसोर्स पोटेंशियल, लास्ट ईयर क्वेश्चन. Exactly. Comment on resource potential of Deccan traps. Do you remember? Last year we have also discussed this. इसी तरीके से हमने analysis session लिया था. Deccan traps, a little bit difficult also. That time most of the students may have interpreted Deccan traps as a Deccan plateau. पूरा ही लिख दिया उसका कुछ भी. Deccan traps is basically the volcanic upper region. Deccan traps जिसको हम बोलते हैं. Now this was comparatively easy. Why? Because resource potential of long coastline, no, लिख सकते हैं, बिल्कुल लिख सकते हैं. long coastline बहुत सारा है, right? Draw the map here again. If you draw the map here, and on the map if you show different resources in different parts of the coastline, that is very, we can say, enriching. आंसर काफी अच्छा करेगा यहाँ पे. ठीक है. क्योंकि आपको 2 पार्ट है इसमें भी, और बहुत सारी चीजें आप लिख नहीं सकते हैं, एलैबोरेट नहीं कर सकते हैं. You mention that on map. Now introduction, simply most of the students must have mentioned that India has long coastline of about 7,500 kilometers, which is rich in resources. ठीक है. इतना भी लिख दिया तो भी सही है. Introduction. Now in resources, resource potential, again those who write the resource potential under different subheadings by classifying in this manner: mineral resources, energy resources, food or biological resources, then land for agriculture purpose, biological में आप vegetation भी लिख सकते हैं, then recreational resources or use for recreation. Okay, so in resources, now you tell me which minerals we find in coastal areas. Most important is sand. Sand is a mineral. Okay, in coastal areas, of course, sand is we can say extracted for construction purpose, for different kinds of, let's say, infrastructure building. Second important is thorium monazite sands. Last year prelims question, thorium monazite sands. कहाँ पे मिलता है monazite sands? Throughout the coastline, but largely it is having rich resources in Andhra Pradesh and Kerala. कहाँ पे मिलता है? कोस्टल एरियाज में. मिनरल्स है ना, तो आपको मिनरल्स बताने आना चाहिए. देन कॉमन सॉल्ट, इट इज मिनरल. देखो कॉमन सेंस है बट स्टूडेंट मिस कर देगा. ठीक है, इट इज अ मिनरल, ओके, बट स्टूडेंट विल मिस दिस एंड इट इज अ वी कैन से पार्ट ऑफ मिनरल रिसोर्स. नाउ व्हाट अबाउट एनर्जी रिसोर्सेस? ठीक है, टाइडल है, ऑफशोर विंड है, वेव एनर्जी है, वेव एनर्जी. देन many of, we can say that oil and natural gas resources are there, like you can mention the Gulf of Khambat region, KG basin, Krishna Godavari basin, है ना, Gulf of Khambat region, Ankleshwar and that region in Gujarat, we have oil resources. Many students, and I have seen that many people are also suggesting ki Bombay High basin region. See, it is saying coastline, it is not saying east head जो अंदर का पार्ट है. ठीक है, it is not saying continental shelf. Coastal area is basically the interface between the marine water and land. ठीक है, वो एरिया देखिए, अप टू टेरिटोरियल वाटर देखिए एटलीस्ट, इसके अंदर का नहीं देखना है. ठीक है, तो गल्फ ऑफ कंबात, केजी बेसिन, यू कैन गिव दैट एग्जांपल फॉर एनर्जी रिसोर्सेस. ठीक है, सो in this manner. Then पहले ये लिखना है. Some students may write this food, fisheries and ये पहले ये लिखिए. ठीक है, बाद में आप फूड वाला लिख सकते हैं. Thereafter land for agriculture. फूड में आप क्या लिखेंगे? फिशरीज, एक्वाकल्चर, श्रिम्प फार्मिंग. ओके, सो दैट इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, वो लिख दीजिए फिशरीज में. देन along with that कोस्टल एरियाज बोला है ना, कोस्ट लाइन, तो कोस्टल एरियाज आर ऑल्सो हैविंग कोस्टल प्लेन्स where rice cultivation, paddy cultivation is very common. There also plantation of coconut, coastal areas में है ना coconut, it is food product, no, ये use होता है ना. ठीक है, land for agriculture अभी जो मैंने बताया उसमें. Then vegetation, the best example, vegetation in coastal areas, mangroves, very important. Mangrove ecosystem is very important. Along with that, they are also acting as a barrier to storm surges, tsunami waves, cyclone, high speed winds. Very important. Okay, it is a resource we can say. ठीक है, then सुंदरबंस का एग्जाम्पल लिखिए इमीडिएटली वहां पे. ठीक है, vegetation, fine. Recreation, of course, most of the let's say beaches, beautiful beaches that we have in India, tourist spots, Pondicherry is there or Goa is there. So recreation के लिए of course it is a resource we can say. ठीक है, resource is something from which human can derive benefits. There can be economic activity, there can be, we can say, further work on that resource to we can say derive certain benefits. तो वो resource बन जाता है. Now second part of the let's say question, highlight the status of natural hazard preparedness in these areas. See, we should first identify which natural hazards are impacting coastal areas. The prominent ones: cyclones, tsunamis, storm surges, floods, coastal erosion. Last year mains question, coastal erosion, natural hazard. They asked this question, right? Eco-sensitive zones, tourism hotspot. Yes, of course, ये उसी का part है. Now, it is saying status. Highlight the status. That means there will be some kind of actions being taken in terms of preparedness, but there should be limitations also. Status बोल रहा है ना, अगर कोई भी cyclone आता है तो still people are dying, no? Cyclone Biparjoy, this year's example. So that means there are some limitations also. It is saying that highlight the status. That means we have to also write the limitations, lacuna in terms of preparedness. First, mention the preparedness. Like most of the, let's say, points should revolve around the tsunami and cyclone only. Major, we can say, threats, hazards. Like we have tsunami early warning system by INQUIS, Ministry of Earth Science. It is located in Hyderabad. So it gives tsunami early warning system. कहीं पे भी पैसिफिक में अगर अर्थक्वेक होता है बड़ा, वहां से सुनामी वार्निंग दिया, immediately this will have the tsunami warning system in India. Shelter homes in the coastal regions, especially cyclone hit areas or states, like for cyclone prone areas like Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal. Thereafter, effective communication system is there at local level, at decentralized level, to disseminate the information. Okay. Then we have color coded system by IMD, India Meteorological Department. Last year's mains question, GS1 paper, color coded system. अभी तो स्टूडेंट ने रट लिया होगा, एक बार पूछ लिया यूपीएससी ने तो आपने उसको तैयार करके रखना चाहिए अच्छे से. Cyclone risk mitigation project is being implemented by Government of India to reduce the impact of cyclones. And you can understand the level of preparedness from one fact that when there was super cyclone in Odisha in 1999, more than 10,000 people died. More than 10,000 people died. Super cyclone. But the most recent example, any of the example you can take, Odisha में अभी लास्ट टाइम अभी कौन सा आया था साइक्लोन रिसेंट में, कोई भी एग्जांपल दे दो पिछले साल का. नॉट मोर देन 100 पीपल डाइड. ठीक है, 10 के भी ऊपर नहीं हुआ होगा डेथ. Within 10 years, 22 years, we have developed such kind of preparedness that loss of life and property has significantly come down. So this is status. But at the same time, the states, coastal states, अब ये तो eastern coastal states, वहाँ का preparedness अच्छा है. What about western coastal states? Now more and more cyclones are being formed in Arabian Sea because of climate change. Most recent example is cyclone Biparjoy. And the problem here is, let's say if this is the coastline and if the cyclone is originated somewhere here, it will travel parallel along with this. Ideally it should move like this, east to west, but in India it will move like this. Why? This phenomenon is called as recurving of cyclones. Once the cyclone crosses 20 degree, 25 degree, that is Tropic of Cancer, it start recurving in the opposite direction. यहाँ का साइक्लोन भी क्या करता है, ऐसे आता है, ऐसे आता है, और यहाँ पे आने के बाद ऐसे पैरेलल हो जाता है और वेस्ट बंगाल तक जाते जाते ऐसे कर लेता है बांग्लादेश. रिकर्विंग, ये कॉन्सेप्ट कभी ना कभी यूपीएससी पूछेगा. ठीक है, रिकर्विंग. Because of this recurving of cyclone, most of the Gujarat and Maharashtra coast has become vulnerable because of the new nature of cyclones being formed. More and more cyclones are being formed in Arabian Sea region. Understood? So you should get this idea and tell the limitations of western coastal states like Gujarat, Maharashtra and Goa, and we can say Karnataka, where new threat of these natural hazards is being faced. तो ये limitation हो गया. ठीक है, तो now we are explaining the complete answer. And in the end, you can mention in conclusion or as a way part of way forward. जहाँ जहाँ हम limitation बता रहे हैं ना कोई भी चीज का, there is always scope to provide way forward. Okay, if we are mentioning challenges, impact, negative impact or limitations, there is scope to write way forward. So here also you can mention that way forward, and what you can mention here, yes, the way eastern coastal states have implemented all these things, there should be capacity building of western coastal states also. Capacity building of the coastal communities. Capacity building of coastal communities to deal with such kind of natural hazards. We cannot stop the natural hazards. ठीक है, हम साइक्लोन को ऐसे डाइवर्ट कर सकते क्या कोई मिसाइल विसाइल छोड़ के? नहीं कर सकते ना, वो तो आएगा, ठीक है. वी हैव टू रिड्यूस द इम्पैक्ट, दैट इज व्हाट मिटिगेशन इज अबाउट. ठीक है. सो यू कैन मेंशन इन दिस मैनर, वे फॉरवर्ड, एंड यू कैन टॉक लाइक दिस. फाइन. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. Identify and discuss the factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation in India. Very simple, straightforward NCERT question. ठीक है. Factors responsible for diversity of vegetation in India, natural. So we know that in India different type of natural vegetation is present. NCERT में map दिया हुआ है natural vegetation के types का. The major correlation lies with rainfall. Major correlation lies with rainfall. First talk about that. When there is more than 200 centimeter of rainfall, we have evergreen, tropical evergreen forest, है ना. कहाँ पर है? ये देखिए डार्क ग्रीन में जो है ना, वेस्टर्न घाट्स एंड नॉर्थ ईस्ट. Then 100 to 200 we have moist deciduous. 75 to 100 we have dry deciduous. Thereafter less than 75 we can say it is thorny and shrub. अब ड्रॉ कर दीजिए, यहाँ पर मैप ड्रॉ करना है यहाँ पे. ठीक है. And you can tell that first factor is climatic factor, that is precipitation, rainfall. We can say rainfall use करिए term. Precipitation is technical term of geography, optional में use होना चाहिए rainfall लिखने का GS में. ठीक है. प्रेसिपिटेशन मतलब वो क्या होता है? हाँ, डिफरेंट टाइप्स होता है देखो प्रेसिपिटेशन के, है ना. दैट्स व्हाई. ओके. क्लाइमेटिक फैक्टर आल्सो इंक्लूड्स टेम्परेचर, एंड दैट्स व्हाई हियर व्हेन देयर आर टेम्परेचर्स आर वेरी हाई, थॉर्नी एंड श्रब टाइप ऑफ. ठीक है. देन सेकंड इंपॉर्टेंट इज टोपोग्राफी. Like what we have in India is different plains are there, then there are plateaus are there, then the mountains are there. According to topography, we have different elevations, altitude. In Himalayas, we have seen that variations in vegetations as we move from bottom to top. ठीक है. Understood? So this depends on topography. Then soil. Yes, it is also important. How? Like let's say there is coastal soil. Coastal areas में soil है, तो वहां पे क्या होता है? Mangroves होता है ना. Mangroves होता है. If let's say semi arid or arid areas, तो वहां पे sandy soil होगा. That will support only thorny vegetation. Bare, babul, that thorny vegetation is there. तो उस टाइप के सॉइल में वहां पे वही ग्रो करेगा, क्योंकि सॉइल मॉइस्चर ही नहीं है. ओके. देन latitude. Of course latitude plays important role. As we move from tropical regions to the temperate regions, changes in the vegetations happen. ठीक है. तो that example you can mention, like in Andaman and Nicobar, being near to the equator, what we have there? Evergreen forest, Andaman and Nicobar. But as we move in the latitude in India, in the mainland, there slowly changes in the natural vegetation happens. ठीक है. Slope aspect, yes, of course it is important. Western slope of Western Ghats, dense vegetation, more rainfall. Southern slope of Himalayas, dense vegetation. Why? Because of more rainfall and exposure to the sunlight. Slope factor also plays important role in terms of nature of vegetation, natural vegetation. ठीक है. Diversity. So these points are sufficient, but you have to mention example. In each of these you have to mention example. ठीक है. और इंडिया का ही पूछा है, इंडिया का ही बताना है एग्जाम्पल. सेकंड पार्ट, assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries. अब देखिए ये significance wildlife sanctuaries का पूछ रहा है, बट कहाँ का? Rainforest regions of India. Specific. Which are rainforest regions of India? Tell me. Rainforest regions of India: Western Ghats, Andaman and Nicobar, and Northeast. Students will miss Andaman and Nicobar, I'm telling you. Okay, they will remember Western Ghats, they will remember Northeast. But yes, you should know that Andaman and Nicobars are also very important. Now, what is the significance of wildlife sanctuaries? The main aspect you should write first. Why wildlife sanctuaries or national parks or these protected areas are formed? The most important aspect is to protect the wildlife and their habitat. The most important aspect, ये पहले लिखना है, wildlife protection. You give any example. You give example of lion-tailed macaque in southern India, Nilgiris. Okay, you can give example of Malabar civet, Kerala में जो मिलता है, ठीक है. It is actually, we can say, threatened species, and their protection is important for overall health of ecosystem, and that's why wildlife protection. Many endemic species are found in certain wildlife sanctuaries, तो उसके लिए भी ये जरूरी है. Then biodiversity conservation, this is also important. Protected areas, one of the objective of protected areas is biodiversity conservation. Thereafter, reduce man-animal conflict. This is also important, right? So as to, let's say, have all these animals protected from this, and along with that human also. Then gene pool or research, like biodiversity, उसका ही part है ये gene pool. For research and monitoring purpose, what we are protecting these different wildlife areas. ठीक है, for let's say it acts as a gene pool. We undisturbed, we can say, part of ecosystem. So this is very important for research purpose. Then of course peripheral things are there. Tourism, wildlife tourism, tiger reserves or wildlife sanctuaries. वहाँ पे तो tourism is very we can say famous. यहाँ पे आप लिख सकते हैं ये वाइल्ड tourism. Tribal people living in the vicinity of this wildlife, and they are involved in the conservation of that wildlife. So basically, drawing the boundaries and protecting those areas includes protection to these people and their interest also. Okay, tribal people. In the end, what you can mention here in the conclusion? सिग्निफिकेंस के बाद में इमीडिएटली थ्रेट की बात करने की. The wildlife in India is more and more threatened, and there is need of more stricter provisions in terms of protected areas. Okay, we need to have wildlife protection, but along with that, whatever the fragmentation of their habitat is happening, we have to reduce it. Fragmentation of habitat. Okay, so this threat is present there, and we have to eliminate this threat. We can mention like this in the conclusion. Then this one, I was telling you this is applied question. How applied? इसका आंसर कहीं पे मिलेगा क्या आपको बुक में, एक जगह पे? नहीं ना, right? Why did human development fail to keep pace with economic development in India? ठीक है, that is problematic, right? So we know that in India there is economic growth. यहाँ पे इंट्रो में क्या लिखना है? Of course, यहाँ पे कोई GDP फिगर पिछले एक डिकेड का आप मेंशन कर सकते हैं, 2 डिकेड का. India is fastest, one of the fastest we can say economy in the world. ये इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट की बात करता है. Simultaneously give another stark fact data related to human development. At the same time, human development index of India ranks 132, which shows the difference between the level of economic development we have and the level of human development we have. हो गया introduction, perfect introduction, facts, data. Okay, now let's come to the body part, explaining the reasons. But before that, you should have clear idea about what do you mean by economic development, what do you mean by human development. When we say economic development, the indicators of economic development, like level of income that people are having, है ना? Then infrastructure that is present, then basic facilities, services that people are receiving, like transport service is there, communication services. It is economic development. Indicators of economic. Now, what are the indicators of human development? The level of education that people are having, the level of quality health services that people are having, the level of skill development people are having, the level of quality of life people are having, human development. Getting this? So, this is human development. Now you got the idea. Now we know that this is problem, still we have this. अब क्यों ऐसा है? Why we are lagging on this? This is what question is asking. Provide the reasons. In the end, provide some way forward. Okay, what are the prominent reasons? First, again, divide, classify, structurize under subheadings. Economic, geographical, political, that is government policies, social also. Okay, now what are the economic reasons for this lag? Fail to keep pace with economic development. Economic reasons. हाँ, वो तो एक इवेंट हो गया. इकोनॉमिक रीजंस, टॉक फ्रॉम इकोनॉमिक टर्म्स और इकोनॉमिक ज्योग्राफी टर्म्स. क्या होगा? ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट फेल टू कीप पेस विथ. सी, वी हैव डेवलप्ड all these things, but where it is happening? It is happening largely in urban areas. ये कहाँ बढ़ रहा है? कहाँ बढ़ रहा है? Urban areas. Most of the economic activities where they are happening. Most of the development of infrastructure where it is happening. Most of the services which are provided urban areas. So that means, and is it like that ki majority population lives in urban areas? No, majority population lives in rural areas, and their human development is not happening. First thing. Now within urban also there is divide. That means economic inequality, economic factor. Inequality means rich poor will receive everything. They have also education, health and everything. उनका human development हो रहा है. But the poor are the masses, even in urban area. ठीक है, class difference, mass difference, ये जो हम बोलते हैं. Basically, this is also economic reason, inequality. Then you talk about geographical factors. Geographical factors कैसे होते? Now, why we have poor, let's say, human development in some of the states, densely forested central Indian states? क्योंकि densely forested है, lack of infrastructure है, access नहीं है, किसके लिए? Health के लिए, education के लिए, and that's why human development. That's why we have aspirational district program in those states, in those districts, है ना? तो वो वाली चीज बतानी है यहाँ पर. Geographical. Northeastern and Himalayan states, human development indicators, level of education थोड़ा कम है compared to mainland, let's say, states. तो वो बताना है आपको. Political and government policies. Why I have mentioned this? Since independence, successive governments largely focused on this and mixed this. You can still see percentage of GDP, if we say more and more expenditure of the government is on infrastructure investment, economic development, and comparatively very less investment in providing these facilities. Government itself does not give attention to this, तो वो lag करेगा ना. Most of the eastern giants like South Korea and some of the South Asian countries who have, let's say, gone beyond India's economic growth in last few years. Why? Because of they focused on this few years back. Now they are reaping benefits of this. Ideal economics will say that you invest in this and later on after 20 years you will reap the benefits. But we started investing in this only. और ये रह गया. ठीक है, this one. Then thereafter social, caste barriers, communal barriers, ghettoization देखते हैं आप, communal barriers की वजह से, caste barriers. ठीक है, that means आप इस कास्ट के तो आप यही काम कर सकते हैं, आपको अपवर्ड मोबिलिटी ही नहीं है. इंडिया में कास्ट डिवाइड, रिजिडिटी ये बहुत ज़्यादा है. और उसकी वजह से क्या है, उनको एक्सेस ही नहीं है अच्छे क्वालिटी एजुकेशन, अच्छे हेल्थ, इसका एक्सेस ही नहीं है, तो ये लैक कर गया. ऑफ कोर्स जेंडर एस्पेक्ट, विमेन, लैक ऑफ एक्सेस टू, ठीक है, ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडिकेटर्स अमंग द विमेन कंपैरेटिवली, ठीक है. तो मेंशन ऑल दीज एस्पेक्ट, सोशल एंड में बताना है, ठीक है, ज्योग्राफी है अगेन, फाइन. सो इन द एंड, इन कंक्लूजन, यू कैन मेंशन दैट you can give reference to Amartya Sen, capability approach, very important. He focuses on human development as a capability building, empowerment. You empower the people through this and ultimately economic growth will happen. This is the solution. And you can give example of any eastern giant, ठीक है, बाकी जो countries है, you give South Korea, Japan, they focused on all these factors as compared to economy too. Fine. Okay. Very simple, straightforward question. Green revolution के बारे में बताना था, ठीक है. From being the net importer in 1960s, India has emerged as a net food exporter in the world. Provide reasons. 15 मार्कर है, सिर्फ reasons नहीं बताने हैं ना, थोड़ा सा बाद में बताना है कि क्या प्रॉब्लम है एट प्रेजेंट, और थोड़ा वे फॉरवर्ड भी देना है. 250 वर्ड्स कैसे लिखोगे, ठीक है. सो यस, इन इंट्रोडक्शन गिव सम रियलिटी अबाउट द क्वेश्चन स्टेटमेंट इटसेल्फ. नो, इन 1960s वी वर इंपोर्टिंग द फूड ग्रेन्स फ्रॉम यूएसए बिकॉज ऑफ सक्सेसिव ड्राउट्स इन 2-3 years. 1960s में 3 साल कंटिन्यूस ड्राउट था, इसलिए क्या हुआ, हम इंपोर्ट कर रहे थे फूड ग्रेन्स, फूड प्रोडक्शन ही नहीं था. एंड देयर आफ्टर द गवर्नमेंट फोकस्ड ऑन this agriculture sector more and high yielding varieties. Green revolution, package technology was launched, and then we immediately after 5-6 years we became self sufficient, and at present we are net exporter. ये एक लाइन में बताइए, दूसरी लाइन में इंट्रोडक्शन में you can mention about India's agriculture exports and its contribution in world GDP या India's GDP. ये क्वेश्चन पूछा है, उसी का इंट्रोडक्शन है exact, by telling you what this statement is meaning or what it is saying here. Now in body part, start giving reasons. Priority, again most important point should be written first. Package technology. So government started giving high yielding varieties. It focused more on irrigation potential, irrigation facilities तैयार की. उसके बाद में fertilizer subsidies, subsidized fertilizers, pesticides, then focused on mechanization, tractors, all this combine machine, subsidized rate में दिया गया सबको. Power subsidies for irrigation, package technology. Thereafter, key technology in the aid of farmers, weather forecast, okay, then bulletins, SMS based weather forecast were given, ठीक है. इस तरीके से ई टेक्नोलॉजी इनको. सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड, रिसेंट एग्जांपल आप दे सकते हैं कि हाउ वी आर फोकसिंग ऑन प्रोवाइडिंग टेक्नोलॉजिकल सपोर्ट. देन अब इतना प्रोडक्शन तो हो गया, उसके लिए स्टोरेज और ट्रांसपोर्ट की भी जरूरत पड़ेगी, ठीक है. ये एरिया भी बता दीजिए आप, पंजाब, हरियाणा, वेस्टर्न यूपी एंड सम पार्ट्स ऑफ तमिलनाडु. तो देयर इट वाज फोकस्ड मोर एंड इट वाज सक्सेसफुल. सो एक ही एरिया में प्रोडक्शन हो रहा है ना, तो वी नीड स्टोरेज एंड ट्रांसपोर्ट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. सो गवर्नमेंट फोकस्ड ऑन दैट. हाउ? थ्रू FCI, Food Corporation of India. Huge large warehouses were built by FCI, ठीक है, तभी तो आया है ना ये FCI. And through that, then there was launching of PDS, Public Distribution System, to ensure food security and price stability. Buffer stock maintenance, public procurement programs launched. Buffer stock, ठीक है, adequate buffer stock was maintained throughout the year. Food grains were available in the country. Basically, it ensured that it not only satisfied the needs of the country, people, citizens of the country, but it started exporting now. Marketing reforms, most recent one you can mention ENAM है ना. Then branding the let's say agro products, agmark, you can mention that it is of certain quality and it can be exported, egg mark. Then we launched the export processing zone specifically for export purpose. Question is related to net food exporter. कैसे बना? We started now. एक बार पेट भर गया, अब क्या बोल रहे हैं, हम पूरे वर्ल्ड का पेट भरेंगे, चलो एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं. ठीक है, तो बेसिकली इट स्टार्टेड एक्सपोर्ट प्रोसेसिंग जोन and food processing industries, it was focused, and this led to more and more, what you can say, export. Food processing industries are very important. Why? It increases the shelf life of food products. जितना रॉ फूड एग्रीकल्चर से निकलता है ना, उसको ज्यादा देर आप स्टोर नहीं कर सकते, वो सड़ जाएगा, वेस्ट हो जाएगा. वंस इट इज प्रोसेस्ड इनटू डिफरेंट प्रोडक्ट्स, उसकी शेल्फ लाइफ बढ़ जाती है. दूध बेस्ट एग्जांपल है ना. तो डेयरी रिवोल्यूशन तो हम बोलते हैं ऑपरेशन फ्लड, तभी तो है. देखिए ये सिर्फ फूड एक्सपोर्टर की बात कर रहा है, फूड ग्रेन्स की नहीं बात कर रहा है. जैसे इट इंक्लूड्स फिश ऑल्सो, इट इंक्लूड्स मिल्क ऑल्सो, इट इंक्लूड्स मीट ऑल्सो. फूड ही है वो. इंडिया इज वन ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट एक्सपोर्टर ऑफ बफेलो मीट, पता होना चाहिए आपको. फूड ही है, फूड ग्रेन्स नहीं बोल रहा है. मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स वो नैरो इंटरप्रेट करता है इस क्वेश्चन को. फूड ग्रेन्स जो फिश के बारे में, दूध के बारे में लिखेगा, वी आर सेल्फ एफिशिएंट एंड वी आर एक्सपोर्टिंग फूड प्रोडक्ट्स ना. ठीक है, तो कैसे हुआ? फूड प्रोसेसिंग इंडस्ट्री, गिव एग्जांपल ऑफ अमूल, कोऑपरेटिव्स, दैट बूस्टेड द प्रोसेसिंग. ठीक है, एंड द मार्केटिंग रिफॉर्म्स, एपीएमसीज, ई नाम, ये सारी चीजें आप बता सकते हैं. ठीक है, एक्सपोर्ट प्रोसेसिंग जोन यू मेंशन बिकॉज इट इज स्पेसिफिकली फॉर एक्सपोर्ट पर्पस फॉर एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्ट्स. ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट के स्कीम्स है वो मेंशन करो. मेगा फूड पार्क स्कीम, पीएम संपदा स्कीम, किसके लिए है ये? एक्सपोर्ट्स के लिए है. ठीक है, आप बोलेंगे GS3 का है, नहीं, ये ओवरलैपिंग है. ठीक है, ये वाला पार्ट ओवरलैपिंग है. वही तो मैं बोलता हूँ वो एग्रो इकोनॉमी है. एग्रीकल्चर पार्ट इज ज्योग्राफी एज वेल एज इकोनॉमी. अंडरस्टूड. ठीक है, तो वे फॉरवर्ड में यहाँ पे ठीक है, आपने इतने सारा पार्ट लिख दिया, बट स्टिल यू मेंशन नाउ दैट एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर इन द कंट्री इज फेसिंग नाउ it is becoming more and more stagnant. Its contribution to the GDP plateau आ गया है, but population is growing. That means further demand for the food products will increase, food grains will increase. Climate change is negatively impacting the food production. पहला ही क्वेश्चन हमने देखा. ठीक है, और उसकी वजह से now we need to ensure that food security of our citizens is ensured. अभी नेट एक्सपोर्टर तो हो गया है, बट वी ऑल्सो नीड टू लुक बियॉन्ड टूडे. फ्यूचर का भी सोचना होगा, उसके लिए हमने कुछ स्टेप्स लेने पड़ेंगे. व्हाट स्टेप्स? देयर इज नीड ऑफ रिड्यूसिंग वेस्टेज, एग्रीकल्चर वेस्टेज. इवन टूडे अराउंड 30% ऑफ फूड ग्रेन्स आर वेस्टेड व्हेन दे आर ट्रांसपोर्टेड फ्रॉम फार्म टू इंडस्ट्री या फिर वेयर हाउस. इसका मतलब हमारे पास ठीक तरीके से वेयर हाउसेस नहीं है एट विलेज लेवल, डिसेंट्रलाइज लेवल. गिव वे फॉरवर्ड, प्रोवाइडिंग और बिल्डिंग द स्टोरेज स्ट्रक्चर एट डिसेंट्रलाइज लेवल. देन कोल्ड स्टोरेज एंड कोल्ड स्टोरेज ट्रांसपोर्ट, इट इज नॉट अवेलेबल एट डिसेंट्रलाइज लेवल, विलेज लेवल. ये तो हम अर्बन एरियाज में देखते हैं कोल्ड ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड ऑल, ये विलेजेस में नहीं है. तो वो क्या करते हैं, आज टमाटर हार्वेस्ट कर दिया, उसको दूसरे दिन बेचना पड़ता है फार्मर को. अगर वो 10 दिन उसके घर में रख सकता है ना, तो ही विल फाइंड अ वेरी गुड वैल्यू ऑफ दैट टोमेटो. तो फार्मर का इनकम भी बढ़ेगा. ठीक है, वो राइट जगह पे बेच पाएगा. ठीक है, और वो जो वेस्टेज है ना, देखो वो डिस्ट्रेस सेलिंग जो होता है ना, इसकी वजह से होता है टोमेटो का. क्यों? उसको स्टोरेज करने के लिए कोल्ड स्टोरेज नहीं है, वेस्ट होता है. ठीक है, सो दिस मस्ट बी रिड्यूस्ड टू एंश्योर फूड सिक्योरिटी. Okay, and then high productivity varieties should be developed. GM crops like GM mustard. अभी आप एग्जाम्पल दीजिए मस्टर्ड वाला, है ना, प्रोडक्टिविटी ज़्यादा है, यील्ड ज़्यादा है, वैसे ही वैराइटीज डेवलप करनी चाहिए. फाइन, सो ये वे फॉरवर्ड का पार्ट बन जाएगा. तो हाउ डू वी प्रिपेयर फॉर नेक्स्ट ईयर देन, कैसे तैयारी करनी चाहिए? Focus should be more on static part, concept and knowledge. Geography is about conceptual understanding, especially geomorphology और climatology. मतलब जो physical geography का part है, it is about concept. And human and economic geography, it is about information. ठीक है, the more and more information you have and the more organized way you present it, more marks. ठीक है, yes. कैन वी राइट ब्रेन ड्रेन, किसके लिए बोल रहे हो ब्रेन ड्रेन विजय? हाँ, ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट वाला आप बोल रहे होंगे, ठीक है. बट हाँ, वो लिख सकते हैं आप, ब्रेन ड्रेन भी लिख सकते हैं उसमें, ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट क्यों पीछे रहा. बट दिस इज वेरी लेस. नो, कितने साइंटिस्ट जाते होंगे इंडिया से, कितने इंजीनियर ही जाते होंगे. ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इज अ ब्रॉडर टर्म फॉर ऑल पॉपुलेशन. ठीक है, so static part, conceptual understanding, focus on this and knowledge related to human and economic geography. तो उसके अच्छे से notes बना के रखने हैं. Own handwritten notes for all syllabus topic except physical geography. Why I'm saying except? This is important. Why? Physical geography is very vast. First thing. Second thing, anyway you are going to revise that for prelims also. तो उसको अलग से आप notes मत बनाइए, बहुत टाइम जाएगा और इतना यूज नहीं है. एक या दो ही क्वेश्चन आएंगे, वो भी सिंपल होते हैं. ठीक है, इस बार का वो फ्यॉर्ड्स था थोड़ा सा टफ, बट स्टिल यू कैन मैनेज्ड. ठीक है, लिख सकते थे उसको कुछ ना कुछ. सो दिस थिंग. सो रिमेनिंग टॉपिक्स जो 3 है, कौन से? नेचुरल रिसोर्सेस, इंडस्ट्रीज एंड थर्ड वन इज जियोफिजिकल फेनोमेना. उसके आपके 40 से 50 पेज के नोट्स बनते हैं और वो आपका लास्ट मिनट रिविजन नोट्स होना चाहिए. ठीक है, देन प्रैक्टिस डायग्राम्स एंड मैप्स, वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. आई टोल्ड यू ड्राइंग मैप्स एंड डायग्राम्स विल फेच यू मोर मार्क्स. +1/2, +1. जो डायग्राम शुड बी सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी, वेल नीट लेबल्ड डायग्राम्स होने चाहिए, तो उन्हीं को फायदा है. नहीं तो ऐसे ही कुछ भी ड्रॉ करके आए तो वो आप जगह का वेस्ट कर रहे हो. ठीक है, फॉलो करंट अफेयर्स फॉर जियोफिजिकल फेनोमेनॉन. क्लाइमेट चेंज है या फिर कोई डिजास्टर हो रहा है, नेचुरल हजार्ड्स आ रहे हैं, तो उसका नाम पता होना चाहिए. जैसे लास्ट टू लास्ट ईयर दे आस्क्ड अबाउट वोल्केनिक इरप्शंस इन लास्ट 1 ईयर. कैसे लिखेंगे 5 उसमें एग्जाम्पल? पूरे वर्ल्ड के वोल्केनिक इरप्शन कैसे याद रखेंगे? स्मार्ट स्टूडेंट्स जो होते हैं ना, वो उनको पता होता है कि एक्टिव वोल्केनो तो हर साल इरप्ट होता ही है. लाइक मौना किया, मौना लोआ, वहाँ का जो हवाई का मेंशन करो, आइसलैंड का चलता ही रहता है वो, तो वो इरप्शन. ठीक है, तो मेजर एक्टिव वोल्केनो का नाम लिख के आ गए स्टूडेंट. सही बात है, लॉजिक यूज करना. ये वैसे ही पुरवैया, फ्यॉर्ड्स, वो वाली चीज यूज करनी थी इस साल भी. ठीक है, बट यू शुड बी अपडेटेड विद द रिसेंट एग्जाम्पल. साइक्लोन्स का पिछले 1 साल में कौन सा साइक्लोन आया, नाम कहां पर आया, वो वाली चीज. क्लाइमेट चेंज से रिलेटेड डेटा, स्पेशली फैक्ट्स डेटा यू शुड प्रिपेयर. इंटरनेशनल रिपोर्ट्स जो आते हैं उसके. एंड इकोनॉमिक ज्योग्राफी, करंट अफेयर्स से डेटा आपको पता होना चाहिए इन टर्म्स ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, इंडियाज प्रोडक्शन रैंक, इंडस्ट्रीज से रिलेटेड इंडियाज रैंक, इससे रिलेटेड पता होना चाहिए. Update your data if you are prepared already. Then brainstorming of applied question. Here the answer writing practice is important. ठीक है, you should come across different kinds of question and you should brainstorm on those questions. I was telling you, टक्कर के जो students हैं अपने, तो आपने ज्योग्राफी के देखे होंगे, 3 टेस्ट में आपने वैरायटी ऑफ क्वेश्चंस को डील किया. ठीक है, डील किया मतलब आपने सोचा उसके ऊपर, एग्जाम में वो इजी हो जाएगा. यू आर ऑलरेडी थिंकिंग अबाउट डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ क्वेश्चन. ठीक है, डिफरेंट एरियाज. जैसे हमने बोला ना कि वो रिसोर्स पोटेंशियल, तो हमने क्या पूछा टक्कर टेस्ट सीरीज में? हमने 2 एरियाज कवर कर लिए. हिमालयाज एक पूछ लिया, दूसरा सुंदरबन पूछ लिया. क्या पता नेक्स्ट ईयर वो आ जाए. इस बार उन्होंने कोस्टल एरियाज पूछ लिया ना. ठीक है, तो दैट्स व्हाई आई एम टेलिंग यू, आपने वो सोचा अभी बैठ के कि हिमालयाज के क्या रिसोर्स पोटेंशियल है, सुंदरबन का क्या है, तब एग्जाम में आपको इजीली अवेलेबल हो जाएगा. ठीक है, फाइन. एंड दैट्स व्हाई राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस आई वाज टेलिंग यू. सो इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. रिसोर्सेस, आई गेस मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स नो कहाँ से पढ़ना है, बट स्टिल आई विल टेल मेजर वंस। 11th एंड 12th एनसीईआरटी इसके दो है, फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी, ये है ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी के दो एनसीईआरटी, इंडिया एंड वर्ल्ड. Most of the students miss on let's say reading human geography NCERT, but I'm telling you human development and economic development वाला क्वेश्चन यहाँ से आया है 12th स्टैंडर्ड NCERT वर्ल्ड ज्योग्राफी. ठीक है, उसमें लिखा होता है HDI, वो वाली सारी चीजें मेंशन की हुई. यस, क्लास नोट्स, आई वाज कमिंग टू दिस पॉइंट. लुकमान IAS ज्योग्राफी क्लास जो होता है अपना GS का, जनरल स्टडीज का, वेयर आई एम टीचिंग ज्योग्राफी हियर एट लुकमान IAS. In classroom itself, there is detailed dictations of different important topics. Before that, we can say generally I focus more on conceptual clarity. When the students have conceptual clarity, the applied aspect becomes very easy. Application of these concepts, different scenarios, even including current developments. ठीक है, तो समझो कहीं पे कुछ बारिश हो गई, अनसीजनल रेन, तो मैं पूछूंगा क्लास में कि कैसे हुआ, क्यों हुआ, क्या है. ठीक है, तो बेसिकली इन क्लासरूम इटसेल्फ यू आर ट्राइंग टू ब्रेनस्टॉर्म डिफरेंट सिनेरियोज, अप्लाइड एस्पेक्ट ऑफ कॉन्सेप्ट. सो क्लास नोट्स आर वेरी हेल्पफुल, स्पेशली रिसोर्सेज से रिलेटेड, इंडस्ट्रीज से रिलेटेड. मैं क्लास में सारी, जैसे लास्ट टू लास्ट ईयर रबर इंडस्ट्री आया है, ठीक है, तो एनसीईआरटी में नहीं कवर किया है, हमने क्लास में कवर किया हुआ था रबर इंडस्ट्री. एटलीस्ट हमने बता दिया था कि इंडिया में कौन सा है, केरला, वर्ल्ड में कौन सा है, इक्वेटोरियल कंट्रीज, एज इट इज इक्वेटोरियल क्रॉप प्लांट, बता दिया था. ठीक है, सो आई एम टेलिंग यू इंपॉर्टेंस हियर. देन रिसोर्सेज एंड इंडस्ट्रीज चैप्टर्स ऑफ DR खुल्लर बुक. DR खुल्लर बुक इज फॉर ज्योग्राफी ऑप्शनल, इंडियन ज्योग्राफी, बट आई एम टेलिंग यू ओनली रीड 2 चैप्टर्स, रिसोर्सेज एंड इंडस्ट्रीज, प्रिपेयर नोट्स आउट ऑफ इट. ठीक है, आपका कोई दोस्त होगा ज्योग्राफी ऑप्शनल, उसके पास जरूर बुक होगा DR खुल्लर, उनसे वो बुक लेना है, जेरोक्स करके लेना है 2 चैप्टर, उसके नोट्स बनाने हैं, फेंक देना है बाकी. ठीक है, लुकमान IAS ED क्लासेस. फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन आई वाज डिस्कसिंग इम्पैक्ट ऑफ क्लाइमेट चेंज ऑन फूड सिक्योरिटी. गेटिंग दिस, impact of climate change on water resources, impact of climate change on health, हमने ये सब ED में कवर कर लिया था. ठीक है, तो वो आएगा एग्जाम में, जरूर आएगा, आज नकल. ठीक है, सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू कवर कंटेम्पररी एंड करंट डेवलपमेंट्स. देन न्यूज़पेपर, हिंदू और इंडियन एक्सप्रेस, ईदर ऑफ इट, एंड डाउन टू अर्थ एंड योजना मैगजीन्स और वेबसाइट्स, यू कैन फॉलो देम, they are important. In addition to these resources, what you can do is we are having daily the Hindu analysis of Lukmaan IAS, DTRS sessions which are helpful for prelims examination preparation. Hindu analysis में दोनों होता है, prelims and mains examination. ठीक है, तो current and let's say all these developments can be covered from that. And now we'll talk about this program. इन टर्म्स ऑफ क्वालिटी, अगर आपने पिछले 2 घंटे से सस्टेन किया हुआ है और आपको सही लगा है, तो यू मस्ट हैव अंडरस्टूड हाउ वी डील विद ज्योग्राफी. ठीक है, द कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवनेस रिगार्डिंग टॉपिक्स, कवरेज ऑफ ऑल सिलेबस फॉर प्रीलिम्स एज वेल एज मेंस इन 40 सेशंस. अगर आपको लगता है ज्योग्राफी सब्जेक्ट आपका वीक है, अभी भी कुछ कॉन्सेप्ट्स क्लियर नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, तो स्टिल देयर इज चांस. क्यों? क्योंकि अभी तक प्री का आपने स्टार्ट नहीं किया है. दिसंबर एंड तक आपको स्कोप है, कोई भी एक सब्जेक्ट वीक है आपको उस पर वर्क करने का, तो देयर इज चांस. द बैच इज स्टार्टिंग 19th of October. ठीक है, तो नियर बाय इटसेल्फ. एंड यस, अदर फीचर्स, इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी एंड क्लाइमेटोलॉजी. मैं ज़्यादातर जो है आपका फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी को क्लासेस में वेटेज देता हूँ. ठीक है, क्यों? देखा जाए तो मार्क्स वहाँ पे कम है कंपेरेटिवली, ह्यूमन और इकोनॉमिक के ज़्यादा है, बट वो समझने में इजी है ना आपको. प्री में क्वेश्चन कहाँ से आता है? फिजिकल ज्योग्राफी से आता है, कॉन्सेप्ट बेस्ड होता है, एंड मैपिंग से आता है. सो ऑफ कोर्स दैट एस्पेक्ट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो along with that 3 integrated टेस्ट फॉर प्रीलिम्स एंड मेंस. क्लास टेस्ट हो जाएगा आपका. क्लास में ही मैं प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस, हर एक जो कॉन्सेप्ट में पढ़ाता हूँ तो वहाँ पे मैं प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस देता हूँ मेंस के. ठीक है, सो दैट एट होम यू कैन ट्राई आफ्टर दैट सेशन. Thereafter mapping aspect is covered. Use of animated videos. मुझे अगर अच्छा YouTube पे वीडियो मिलता है तो मैं वो क्लास में दिखा देता हूँ कि एक्चुअली कैसे हो रहा है ये फिजिकल फिनोमेना. इमेजेस, तो इससे क्या होता है कि ऑडियो विजुअल मेमोरी हमारा बहुत अच्छा होता है. इट हेल्प्स इन कॉन्सेप्चुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग. एंड देन देयर आफ्टर ऑल PYQs ऑफ रिलेवेंट सिलेबस टॉपिक्स आर. ये 40 लेक्चर्स होने के बाद में हमारे जो बैच का स्टूडेंट होता है वो बोलता है कि हमारा PIQ सारा कवर हो चुका है क्लास में. द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट दैट टुडे स्टूडेंट शुड गेट फ्रॉम दिस कोर्स इज उसका PYQ कोई भी नहीं छूटना चाहिए, है ना. और PYQ सही है तो उसके बाद में उसको सही से बाकी चीजें आ जाती है. ठीक है. सो दीज आर सम फीचर्स एंड इफ यू आर इंटरेस्टेड you can join this particular module also, although it is part of GS foundation batch, there can be separate enrollment for module also, and you can contact this number. Lukmaan IAS website also you can subscribe. It is available offline as online live manner. ठीक है. Any question? Online students? All right, let us stop then. We have ED session coming up. Okay, let us stop. Fine.